Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Embrace Live. Hope you're doing well this fine Wednesday evening. I'm not sure what kind of day that you've had. I've had a day today. It's been a long day, but fantastic one. Well, so it's great to do that. This is the joys of teaching, which I absolutely love, getting to work with kids and so on. But it's draining. I'll be honest with you, it's draining. It's like herding cats at some point. All right, but it's all good. I hope you're having a good day. Maybe you're up there on the, loving life, living your best life, living the dream, as I like to say. Or maybe, maybe things aren't going so well for you. But thank you for tuning in. We do appreciate you kind of giving up your evenings. Thank you for those of you who are tuning in live now. Just don't be shy. Just let them, leave a comment just to let us know that you're online and where you're tuning in from. It'd be great to hear from you and just to kind of find out who's in tonight. And we've got a really good show. Obviously, let me, planned for tonight, as always. Let me just kind of say, Embrace Live is just something that we do at Embrace Church, but actually it's gone much broader than that because actually I like to celebrate, and we talk about celebrating. There's only one church in reality, and that's God's church, all right? And we've got, like I said, as I described them, lots of different flavours. And it's been fantastic to kind of do these episodes. I think we are up to, if I remember rightly, the episode 28, I think it's about there. So we don't tend to do them during kind of, because I'm a teacher, I've already said that. So, we do them during term time, and we have a bit of a break during the kind of school holidays and things. All right. And, so it's been great to kind of celebrate much wider than Embrace Church and as part of one church with a capital C, as I like to describe it. And it's great to hear from people all over, the kind of northeast and beyond. I'm so grateful for all the people that have given up their evenings to come and feature. I'm looking forward to welcoming our guest tonight, and we'll go over and see him soon. With the wonderful, the amazing Jamie Daniels, who is sat on my other kind of monitor here, looking keen, looking, kind of pulling faces at me already and making gestures and things. Not rude gestures, I have to be honest. All right, which is good. I'm sure we can get worse. Let me just say hello, welcome to Hannah. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for posting a comment there. Honestly, come on, people. Make sure that you do that. Let us know that you're online, and I can see all of my secondary monitor here, all the comments and things that you're doing that. So, if it's your first time tuning in, my name's Dave Dixon. I get the pleasure and the honour of being part of Embrace Church in Darlington, and I get to serve on the leadership team there and other things as well. And it's great. It's a fantastic church. And so, actually, if you ever want to come and check us out, please, obviously come and kind of jump on our website and so on. Let me just put that website on there so you can see. If you want to come and do that and just find out, obviously you've headed over and you've landed on our Facebook page. So please free to do that. And, what would be really helpful, actually, if you don't mind, is jumping onto YouTube, just doing a search for Embrace Church Darlington and our channel, just subscribing to that, just so... and while we, kind of talking about our socials, you can also follow us on Twitter. And also, we are on Instagram as well, which I need to just update and put onto here. All right. So my name is Dave Dixon, like I say. And I put tonight's host, hoping at some point... Actually, you might get a different face and a different voice on here, which would be great. And so I'm going to try and persuade some people to kind of step in as well. Okay, I'll even mention Hannah Jackson, who's also tuned in and so on. So Hannah, if you fancy that, we need to talk more because I think you'd be great at this. All right, so let's just head over and just say hello to Jamie, our tonight's guest. Here he is, waiting. How are you doing, Jamie?
I'm very good, thank you. Good to be with you, Dave.
Good man. And we've already had a quick discussion about how holy and spiritual and learned that you look with your bookcase full of theology stuff behind you. But you're also, musicians like ourselves, we clock things like the wonderful Ovation guitar. Give me some details on that guitar again. How long have you had that one?
So I've had that one since I was 12. It's a 1978 Balladeer, but I haven't had it from new, obviously, because I'm not quite as old as you are, Dave.
Not quite, no.
But it is a proper American spruce deep bowl Ovation rather than the narrow bowl.
Oh, the deep bowl. You went with the deep bowl. Nice one. So, lovely guitar. I'd like to play that at some point if we ever get the opportunity. But there we go, if you're up for sharing. So we've got the important stuff out of the way. So, Jamie, we're going to come back to you in a moment. I'm just going to chat on a little bit more, and then we'll come back to you and we'll kind of get into it tonight. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you giving up your time. So I'll see you soon. All right. So... as you can see, Jamie's primed and ready to go. It'll be good to, I've known Jamie for many years and in different kind of places, and that's the beauty of doing this church thing, is that you get to know people from all over, all right? And it's great to be able to kind of reconnect a little bit. I haven't seen Jamie in the flesh for years, but it's good to be able to do this tonight. So, I'm noticing my camera position is moving a little bit. I'm going to have to get this sorted. I'm sorry about that. All right, great to welcome Sue. Let's see, Hannah, and Val's online as well, which is great. Tony's joining us online. I'm just reading out these comments. And then, a little kind of conversation going on, which is brilliant. So, welcome if you're tuning in live, okay, which is always the best, I would say, because then we want to make this as interactive as possible. We want you to feel free to comment and to ask your questions for Jamie. And those, the more difficult, the better, because he's obviously a very learned guy. I'm looking at him on my other monitor as well, because look at all those books in the background. He must know his stuff. All right, so let's kind of chuck out these questions, and we're going to hear Jamie's story, and then obviously how he's living that out, and what does that mean, and what he's involved with, and the fantastic things that he does in the area. Okay, so feel free to make it interactive and do that, and please, try and tune in live if you can. Set your reminders every Wednesday night, apart from school holidays, 8 p.m. till 9, and we do an hour. But you are more than welcome, and thank you. I know a number of people, I've been chatting with some people this week in particular, who've said that they tune in at another time. Wednesday nights are not good for them, okay? And so that's the beauty, isn't it, that we can kind of pick up the on-demand stuff via the Facebook page or via our YouTube channel, whichever you prefer, and we can do it that way as well. So thank you for just kind of tuning in, like I say. I'm really pleased and excited that actually, I was saying to Jamie before we came on air, I'm really happy that we've got so many different people lined up. And I'm really, excited that actually we've got a full program, for the rest of this month, for all of March, and then almost all of April. So we've got people who are lined up and willing to come on just to tell their stories and their experiences, what they're doing to serve Jesus, what that looks like in their lives, in their community, how they've been gifted to do that. And there's just a few of the people that we've got lined up. Some have been on already. I'm really pleased that I managed to collar Tony Grange, who's the gentleman in the top left of the image there. I managed to tie him down because he's a really busy fella to a date, which was good. And he wanted something from me, which is good. So I said, I'm not giving you that until you actually give me a date. So we'll see. I'll kind of hold off giving him the sound system that he was after, etc. All right, but again, there's loads of people on there. You can see Jamie's featured in there with his wonderful family, and there's lots of others that we haven't seen just yet. And there's lots of other images of people, like I say, who are not on that image. So I'll have to update that a little bit. Who are all there and ready to go, and I've got dates for. So please feel free to kind of jump in, tune in as and when, live if you can. Share them. That really helps us, as always. I sound like a proper YouTuber at this point when I say like and subscribe and all of those. I could do the little bell ding notification stuff. I might even do one of those next time for you. Stay tuned. But like I say, I want us to be as interactive as we can, spread wide as we can as well, to celebrate all that God is doing in the Northeast area and of course beyond, because God is alive, he's on the move, we're taking ground, and it's amazing how we need to hear these stories, because that again just lifts our faith, and again it's amazing to hear those kind of different stories or everything. All right, I'm going to play this little leaders intro. I've rattled on enough already, and then we're going to be joined by Jamie, and we're going to get into it there, just kind of find out who he is. Like you say, what's he doing? What's his story? How did he become a Christian? What does that look like? And then, obviously how he's living that out. And I know that he does some amazing things in the roles that he's got. All right, so let's play this leaders video, then we'll hear from Jamie. Here we go. And here we are. Hello, Jamie. I have to say, you're rocking that T-shirt. I love that. Did you choose that especially for us tonight?
So I tend to wear cheesy Christian T-shirts quite a lot, and it first came about by I was thinking, like, when I started doing Youth for Christ stuff, I thought I need to be that trendy with the youth kind of guy. So
Totally.
I googled the phrase "cool Christian T-shirts." And I got a website. I had to import them for America,
Yeah.
and then I found a local company based in Whitley Bay, who actually are a Christian T-shirt organisation, company called Evanware.
Yeah.
So, to get the plugs in early, Northeast Youth for Christ, we have a great youth event called As77.
Yeah, yeah.
And Evanware have a stand there where you can get all of their T-shirts and all of their stuff. So
Cool. Well,
I'm promoting.
why not? Absolutely. I love it already. So let's come back to You for Christ and As77 and the wonderful merchandise you've got for all of that. We can, give us a bit more detail about that a little bit later on. But I mean, what's really good about these kind of episodes is actually people and the feedback that comes back, and people are just really interested in other people's stories. And we're all people watchers, aren't we? All love a bit of reality TV and things like that. But particularly when it comes to how people are saved, the amazing important stuff, none of this Love Island trash and things. Let me just put this on the screen. Actually, a couple of comments by Hannah Jackson, who we both know well. She's loving the T-shirt already. Put a couple of whoops for you there, and already she is putting her endorsement on for Ask77, which is, in her words, class. And I've looked. I've never actually been. I must admit, I apologise. Probably because I'm not youth or whatever. But and so. But I've always followed, obviously, online, and it looks great. An amazing event. And so, like I said, we'll hear a bit more about that later, if that's all right with you, Jamie.
Yeah, great.
I'm sure you'll be happy to talk about that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get into that, then obviously I've mentioned a couple of times, people, we're really interested in your story and things like those kind of three questions. As always, I like to ask, what was life like before you became a Christian, and then what was life like, or the circumstances around why you made that decision to commit your life to Jesus and serve Him, and again, and then the next one, which obviously is what's life like since then, that point really, and I think we've established through many kind of people's stories that life isn't all roses and buttercups and unicorns and butterflies and perfect in every way, those kind of things, that actually we still live real lives. And those kind of things. Now I'm going to pause here because I think this is important that I received this encouragement from a good friend of mine, Paul Hutchinson, who's also a member of Embrace Church, who's letting the banter flow tonight, who's just confirming for everybody, if they actually needed confirming, because I have got a good quality camera, that actually I'm not in my youth. No, I am not. You're right, Paul. Thank you for that. Okay. Nice banter there. Thank you. You're learning. You're actually getting much better at that. So. But when you want to start having some Premier League kind of banter, then come back later when you've learned to do that. All right. So, Jamie, tell us a bit about who you are. What do you do for a job and those kind of things. Are you married or your family, whatever that kind of. I know. Obviously, just you don't give us as much detail as you want to. Don't give us your bank account details or your credit card numbers. If you want to, you can. We've all got pens ready for that. Go on, tell us a bit about yourself.
To be fair, you don't want my bank account or credit card details because I work full time for a Christian charity.
All right,
so
yeah.
You probably won't find anything in either of those
Good
things.
point.
So,
good point. Yeah.
So it's not worth it. I mean, a man of your means with flashy caravans like yours.
Oh, absolutely.
Your bank details would be more helpful for everybody.
Yeah. I'll share my credit card details later because
great.
Yeah, they're maxed out, so you won't get anything more on them. Anyway, go on, tell us a bit about yourself then, Jamie.
Yeah, so for me, as you know, my name's Jamie. I am 41 now, which will make you a little bit scared because you remember me as a youth, Dave.
I do.
So, that ages you, as Paul pointed out earlier.
Let me just say for everybody that I am 50, okay? So there we go. So I'm not that much older than you, so, there we go.
Yeah, so I have an amazing wife called Helen, who is a full-time art teacher based in Sunderland. Really? And I have a little boy who's just coming up to 4 called John.
Who did a little appearance just before we came on air, which is fantastic.
Yes, yeah.
But you've all, I've said we don't mind the live interruptions, but obviously he's out there busy going to bed and reading his Bible stories and things like that, which was a lovely moment just to say, Daddy, where were you up to in the Bible stories? Love that.
That is exactly what he said. We did preempt that, so I look all spiritual and holy.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
my
so,
style
Daddy,
goes
where we up to in the
Spider.
Bible stories and all those books behind you. So we've got some deep theology coming tonight. This is what we want. Some really, good question. So, obviously, good. I'm just looking to see who's joined us online. So we have got Gary Jackson, which I was hoping
Gaz
for.
Jackson.
And, he's already jumping in there. Least mine is paid for. That is a reference to the caravan. That, and obviously caravan walls as we have in. There we go. All right. So thanks for joining us, Gary. Obviously, Mr. Gaz Jackson, the one and only, and no doubt we will have more comments from him throughout. And some of them I might even put on screen if they're okay. So you're married. You've got. I didn't know that Helen was an art teacher. I did an art degree, so that's good on her. So obviously, it's good to hear.
So did she. That's why she ended up being a teacher.
Yeah. So we didn't have a proper education. That's it, wasn't it? Yeah, there we go. So obviously then. There we go. I don't know who Sue's actually replying to there. You're obviously a cheeky young whippersnapper, but there we go.
I'll take that.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. I mean, I think that's directed at you because it can't be, it's got the word young in there, so there we go. So I know before we get into your kind of, story of how you became a Christian and so on, I know that actually you and I recently shared in quite an emotional, quite traumatic kind of event, really, as one of the world's best rock gods sadly passed away, and so the wonderful mighty Mr. Meatloaf passed away. Now, again, I noticed that you were posting things on your timeline. And, for me, I found out when I was at school on the dinner time, somebody made a comment and I was absolutely gutted. So actually, on that afternoon, I said, right, we're doing like a School of Rock experience. So literally it was Meatloaf for the whole of the afternoon and these different kind of things, obviously as much as you can with primary kids. Because some of the content is a bit, interesting. But, obviously you're a big fan because, I'm really grateful for whoever posted it, but I just thought we'd share with the world this bit of footage.
Oh, no.
I love the passion in your delivery here, sir. Come on.
I think we should stop it there.
No. I mean, that is a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing.
So that was Gav Richards. That video was courtesy of him.
Thank you, Gav. We shall be ever in your debt.
Oh, dear.
I mean, honestly, it was just worth tuning in just for that, isn't it? We're not bothered about what happens since then, just obviously for that moment. Now, it is available, obviously, on YouTube, and, you can... I can see Gaz's kind of comments already. I'm sure you can read those as well. But, obviously, I love the passion in that performance, and I was quite impressed. I've actually watched it all as well. Even not in a few kind of seconds. But so it's well worth watching anybody else get that.
Just to answer a couple of the questions, what's frightening, Gaz, is the answer is not many.
Yeah.
And the answer to Hannah is yes, that is SingStar.
Absolutely. All right. And actually, I know Paul, so you can see there's a couple of comments coming through. Paul's just obviously showing his, appreciation for your absolute talent there. I thought you did pretty well, actually. I was quite impressed.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you stopped it where you did, because if you get later on, Meatloaf, for some reason, has more energy than any other human being on the planet.
This is true.
And I certainly ran out of steam halfway through the song.
Yeah. I was quite impressed with your dress sense as well. The tie was a bit random. Do you want to explain yourself?
It was because at the party there was somebody who went to school where I went to school. It was a church thing, and he turned up in his school uniform, and it was my old school tie, so I nicked it.
All right, fair enough. There we go.
Yeah. There you go.
Quality entertainment. Obviously, I mean, it might even put that on a little bit later on as well. We'll see how we go. If the conversation just kind of gets a bit awkward, whatever for any reason, I'm sure it won't. But we might just have a little every now and again. Just come back to that video. So on a serious note, then let's go on. Let's hear your story then. So those kind of three questions. What was life like beforehand? What were the circumstances? When did it happen? As in you're making a decision to follow Jesus, and then what is life like? Obviously, then we can get into everything that you're involved with at the moment then as well. Go on, over to you.
Yes, I think for me it's quite interesting, and having Gaz Jackson and yourself on the call, it's interesting because you guys have known me for quite a long time. You've
That's
known
true.
me through different stages of life and all the rest of it, and for me, I was one of these that there isn't really a before and after. There's a before, a middle, a slip, and then a later.
Yeah.
And it's a journey rather than a kind of nice, simple. I'd love to say
Absolutely.
that, I gave my life to God at a meeting and then everything was amazing after that, but that's not how my life ran. So
Yeah.
I grew up in a Christian home. My mum's a Christian, went to church all the time. My parents were actively involved in youth work. My first harvest was 1989, where I came as an 8-year-old.
Just tell us what harvest is. Sorry to interrupt, Jamie. Just tell us just in case, because obviously we've got people who maybe are not familiar with what's harvest.
So for all those people who aren't as old as Dave and I, Harvest was a youth event that used to happen in the Northeast, which was a youth camp that where churches from all over the Northeast and beyond used to all come to Harvest, and it was just a great kind of get together, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how often it features in people's stories as well. So it's really humbling because I know obviously we've been involved in that and so on. So yeah, go on.
And I think talking about Harvest, I'll mention a little bit more in a bit.
Yeah.
But actually, Harvest for me was always a constant that kept my faith alive and part of who I was.
Yeah.
But when I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were actively involved in church. But when I was a teenager, my parents got divorced, and it wasn't affairs or anything like that, but my parents got divorced. But they were always the couple in the church that everybody looked at, that said, if a married couple looks like something, this is it.
Right.
And that was my parents. And when they got divorced, it affected me quite heavily. I rebelled at school. I got into quite a lot of trouble. I got kicked out of school in the end. I think all along, I remember I always had faith. I always believed in God, but I went through a period where I was angry with him.
Yeah.
And I remember the words of one of my teachers actually saying, "Look, you might have given up on God at the moment, but He still loves you. He still cares about you, and He's still there for you when you want Him." And I think for me, I just went through a period where I need to get back to that place where I said, "No, God, I'm turning back to you." But when I talk about there being one constant with things like Harvest, is through it all. Yes, I was rebelling and I was going through a difficult period of life, but actually, every month I would go to Ninth Hour.
Yeah.
Every year I'd go to Harvest, and it was like this moment where it was kind of I was still connected in with faith. I still believed in God. I was just in that place where it was all a bit of a struggle, and and in my later teens, I got a great pastor who looked after me, and it was great. And I turned back to God in my faith, and had a great period where I was on fire for God and involved in church stuff, and as an older teen, and then sort of hit my 20s and discovered money nights out and girls, and then it all slipped and fell apart again.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, throughout it all, I still believed in God and I still had a faith.
Yeah.
And I still attended Ninth Hour and Harvest.
Explain, Jamie. Sorry, what's Ninth Hour then? Just for those that don't know, obviously that event, fantastic event.
Yes. So growing up in the kind of 90s, 2000s, there was a couple of things that were really big Christian ministries in the Northeast. One of them was an event called Ninth Hour, the Northeast Youth for Christ, where I am now, used to put on in the City Hall. And a couple of weeks you guys had Ken Riley. Riley used to lead worship at that event with White Friday. And that for me was just it was almost like a kind of keeping that God, I'm still here, even though I wasn't living the life that I should.
Yeah.
And I think I went to Ninth Hour, but then Harvest as well. I always went to Harvest. I mean, I remember, rocking up to Harvest in big flashy company cars and causing chaos and all the rest of it.
Oh yeah.
But I always still went,
Yeah.
In fact, I was talking to, I don't know if you know Andy Osserton from
Yeah.
Wearside Youth
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Christ. He's the director of Wearside Youth for Christ. And we were talking about a time when I was driving a big Volvo four-wheel drive around the site at Harvest. And I had loads of people standing on the side of it, holding onto the sidebars, falling off, and we're going through mud. And him just going, I remember you were causing chaos. It was a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I went through this period, and I think for me, it was kind of one of those. I'd been hurt a little bit by church. I went to a church that was quite, um, very much about, So one of the examples, actually, as you mentioned, Meatloaf, I
Yeah.
went to a church where they told me I had to burn a record collection.
Right.
So it was
Okay.
kind of very heavy shepherding, and it put me off church for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I think for me, the Carrie Jackson was in the car. Brilliant. Um, I think one of the things for me was around kind of my mid 20s, so when I was 24, 25, I was in a position where I was living completely away from church. My
Yeah.
life was getting quite difficult. I was out most weekends. I was in a good job. I was earning quite a lot of money for my age. I was doing really well. I was successful, but I certainly wasn't happy because there was something missing.
Yeah.
And I remember I bumped into, and some of you guys might know him, a guy called John Cook,
Yeah.
who I'd known from the Harvest days and everything else. And John said to me, "Look, I'm planting a church in Newcastle. Why don't you come and join me?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, that's lovely," and kind of walked away from the conversation.
Yeah.
And then about 6 months later, I was in a position where I just really felt like I should probably go and see John's church. And when I turned up, the church in question was Newcastle. It was a silver XC90, Gary. You're right. And I turned up to a church in Newcastle. It was a little church at the time. There was about 30 people in the congregation,
Yeah.
and it was the first week they'd ever done worship. So
Right.
there was one guy on a guitar, and I ended up getting involved in this church. And I remember for me, the thing that really spoke to me was nobody judged me, nobody treat me any differently because I wasn't living a perfect Christian life.
Yeah.
What they just said was, "Hey, you're welcome here. This is a place where you can come and feel welcome." And it was just great. And I got involved with team. I helped with the setup and pack down, and
Yeah.
got involved with church. And I just remember going round to John's house for a barbecue. And I remember at the time, and it was a big thing for me because obviously my experience of church was a church that, wanted me to burn my collection of great 80s power records.
Yeah.
And I remember I walked up to John's door, and it was the time as the Sony Walkman phone had just come out. It was pre-iPhones and all of that. And I was sat, and I had my headphones in, and I was listening to AC/DC Highway to Hell.
Yeah.
And I got to the door, and John answered the door and says, "Oh, come in." I was just taking my headphones out. And he said, "What are you listening to?" And I said, "Oh, well, actually, AC/DC Highway to Hell," which, and he said, "Oh, brilliant." And I remember John taking my headphones off me, putting them in, and jumping up and down in his kitchen, air guitar playing Highway to Hell. And I just thought, do you know, if the pastor is that down to earth and that normal, I want to get involved here
Yeah.
because, it's just going to be a fun place, and I think what it was the fact and over time, at the time, I lived with my girlfriend at the time, and, smoked like a chimney. I was out every night, but nobody ever said, "You can't do this, you shouldn't do that." What happened was they accepted me, loved me, valued me, gave me an environment where I could contribute and I could be part of church.
Yeah.
And then over time, the Holy Spirit convicted me of the things the Holy Spirit wanted to convict me of.
Yeah.
And that was a really important part, I think, of my journey.
Yeah.
So I remained part of, I was part of that church for 15 years.
Yeah.
And throughout it, I grew in, I developed a real passion for theology, hence the books. Some of them I've read, other ones I've quoted out of for assignments.
Yeah.
But, and I ended up part of the leadership team of what was Newcastle Christian Life Centre. And I really felt, at the time I was working in the energy industry, I was quite high up in management in the company I was in, and was doing very well, but was probably doing as many hours at church voluntarily as I was in work. And I just really felt the Holy Spirit say, "Look, I want you to make this your living. I want this to be your everything. I'm calling you to ministry."
Wow. Yeah.
And I remember talking to John about it and thinking he'd probably just laugh and say, "No, you've got a good job, crack on.
Yeah.
You can do that where you're at." But I really felt that was the case, and John confirmed that, and a number of other people who I turned to and talked to confirmed it and said, "No, I believe this is what God's called you." There was nowhere else you could study in the Northeast other than Durham University if you
Yeah.
wanted to do theology in the Northeast. So I went to Durham University. I was the only person there who wasn't training to be an Anglican minister.
Right.
Um, so, I was this mad Pentecostal amongst all the Anglicans. But it was just a real pleasure to study there. And I think it's kind of given me a real broad understanding of church
Yeah. Yeah.
and the church rather than a church.
Yeah.
Um, and then so I did my theology degree in Durham, and that was great, and fantastic period of time. Lived by faith in that. So in that year, in 2013, I got married in the February. In about the March, April, I felt called to ministry. In August, I handed in my notice at my job, and my wife also handed in her notice at her job because she felt God calling her to teach.
Wow.
So she worked in art education at the Baltic at the time. So we both quit work, and I turned up at Durham University in the September, wondering how on earth am I going to pay the bills? And I remember God just did some phenomenal things. He provided for us. We always had what we needed. We didn't always have what we wanted, but we always had what we needed, and
Yeah.
God provided.
Yeah. So 2013 was a big year then, wasn't it?
It was definitely a very big year, and that was obviously through till kind of 3-year degree I did there, and I
Yeah.
did it full time.
Right.
But God did a couple of amazing things. There was a new energy company open up, and they rang me up and said, "Can you help us? Can you do some consultancy?" And that was quite well paid,
Good.
as I had a little part-time DJ business that, while I was at university, kind of went from being this little business to being one of the largest DJ companies in the Northeast, providing
Right.
DJs for event. And then as soon as I graduated, it just dropped down to being a part-time hobby again.
Really?
So
Yeah,
it's
obviously
amazing what
we've
did.
clocked the decks in the background as well as the lovely Ovation guitar and keyboard. Obviously, we can see your decks there as well. So, right, I mean that's amazing. Obviously, in that time that God is, in your journey, obviously, and I think everybody who's a Christian would say exactly the same thing. It's not that, like you said, it's a journey. It's not just like a smooth kind of thing. It's it's ups and downs and times when you feel on fire, and then maybe times when you feel quite distant from God. God doesn't go anywhere. We do, don't we? So
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, and it's amazing. We've talked about churches and church experiences. I mean, churches are, amazing places. God's church is an amazing place, but the only problem is they're full of people. So people in their best interest, make comments and have their attitudes and you're not alone. Like many people are hurt by other people in church. And we get it wrong, don't we? So I'm just so thankful. I mean, yeah, you mentioned a number of people that we know. Obviously John and Dee Cook, who are great people, great. And obviously now in Canada, aren't they, with running the church and leading the church over there. But obviously known John and Dee for many years from the time in Teesside as well before they headed up to Newcastle. And I'm so thankful that, like was demonstrated, lived out with John grabbing your headphones and air guitaring in the kitchen, reflecting Jesus in that, and Jesus just says to anybody, "Come as you are." That's that's what it is, isn't it? It's just like we accept you, and again, it's great to hear that the church at that time, that you remember, were just literally very accepting of who you are, and say okay, and maybe didn't obviously condone everything that you were doing or what I was. I'm not, but obviously you reflected in your story. But you said very clearly then that was the Holy Spirit through those situations were
And
convicting you.
I think what you get with that is, I think everybody remembers John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shouldn't perish but have eternal life."
Yeah.
But a lot of people miss the next bit. And John 3:17 is, "I didn't come to the world to condemn the world, but in order that it might be saved."
Yeah.
And I think so often as churches and Christians, we can often be defined by what we stand against.
Right.
People know the church about what it stands against, whether that's whatever issue it may be. However, I think really what we need to be known for is what we stand for,
Yeah.
not necessarily what we stand for against. And if we're known for what we stand for, which actually is love God, love others,
Yeah.
then actually through that, people miss the fact that actually the gospel message, it's not behave, believe, belong.
Mm.
You know, it can often be belong, believe, behave, and the
Yeah.
behave comes later because it's out of the relationship with Jesus. It's out of the fact that God transforms you and the Holy Spirit convicts you that actually you start to live a different way.
Yeah.
So if
Absolutely.
as a church you start saying to people, well, you've got to do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't do the other,
Mm.
what you're trying to do is you're trying to force somebody into something that they're not ready to do.
Yeah.
They need to get to the place of relationship with Jesus where actually out of that relationship you start to live a different way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's half the battle really, is people don't realize that your right standing with God, sometimes it's not dependent on what you do,
Mm.
whether that's good, bad, whatever it is. It's not about you, it's about what Christ did for you.
Yeah.
And when you get that, you choose to live a different way, because why would you not live for the one that died for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's where it changes, is it's the order of the way things come. And I think understanding that's really important for Christians.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Just to say, obviously, if you've got comments and things, please feel free to share them. Obviously, we've got some confirmation of some of your antics at Harvest and other places like that from the likes of Gary Jackson and Hannah and so on. All important stuff. But if you've got any questions for Jamie from what he's mentioned, then please, post them. I'm sure we can make time to kind of, jump in and get those answered for you. So, 2013, very big year for you. You and your wife giving up, obviously, employment to, feeling very, clear that a calling into God's calling into new things. 3-year theology degree at Durham University. What happened after that?
So I think just to go back a little bit to 2013, I just really felt in that time, I felt God put a particular conviction on my heart, and that was, Jamie, I'm calling you to see people come to know me and see people grow in their faith, knowledge, and relationship with me.
Yeah, great.
And that was the real conviction that God put on my heart. It's similar to you guys, and I think yours is what is it? Is it know, grow, go?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
is the grace thing. Yeah,
yeah,
and I really like that because it sums it up in 3 words, which is a lot better than my wordy thing that God gave me. But for me, it's great because what it does is it simplifies what God's calling us to do.
yeah,
And what it did for me was it gave me a personal vision. And it said, and it was God putting on my heart, this is what I've called you to do. This is the vision I'm placing within you.
yeah.
So for me, everything else I've done since has come from a place of, does it do those 2 things?
Right.
And if it does those 2 things, then it's fine. If it doesn't, then I'm not going to bother because it's not what God's called me to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to understand where's God calling you to be. And it might not be full-time ministry.
Mm.
You can be a great minister wherever you are because actually you're the hands and feet in Jesus in wherever the place you might be.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you look at Northeast Youth for Christ, and that was kind of came a bit later. I graduated from uni. I went back into the energy industry, for a bit, but that was always on the proviso that I'll leave one day for ministry.
Yeah.
And then the job with Northeast Youth for Christ came along, and I made a decision that I didn't need my energy industry salary anymore, and left and took the job with Northeast Youth for Christ.
Yeah.
And the reason I took the job with Northeast Youth for Christ was because the mission statement was massive. And it was, our role as Northeast Youth for Christ is taking good news relevantly to every young person in the Northeast. And I thought, that's a vision I can get behind.
Yeah.
And it's bigger than me, and I'll never achieve it, and I'll never get to where that target is. It's not a goal I'll ever succeed in my lifetime, but I can contribute to building something that can eventually achieve that.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was just a big vision, big audacious vision, and I wanted to be part of that. And that's why I took the role with Northeast Youth for Christ.
Okay, well, maybe tell us a little bit more about Youth for Christ in a moment, your role and what that kind of looks like then, how you live that out. I'm just conscious, obviously, Hannah, then we've asked for questions. Let me add this on here. Let me see. It's quite a long question. I can just kind of move it around a little bit just to kind of make sure it fits on here. So, did you get a wider understanding of other forms of churches due to studying with the others? You mentioned that you were a Pentecostal amongst many Anglicans. Help you understand... Oh, let me put that back on again. Apologies for that. And so, help you understand what was going on with the burning of the records. However, don't burn them. So Hannah's behind you on there. And So what about that wider understanding then? Did that really help?
So I think with with a lot of the stuff that I've been involved in the past, especially with Harvest and Ninth Hour events
Yeah.
and and all of that, I've been fairly open church wise anyway.
Yeah.
So I've never really been locked down to this is my camp and that's all I really care about, because I think there's a
Well,
lot
that's
we can
important, isn't it?
learn from.
Because yeah, Harvest and Ninth Hour drew from lots of different churches or
Yeah,
flavors, as I describe them. So absolutely, yeah, that's important.
yeah. I think it was interesting to what I found studying at Durham was really interesting, because I think you got a mix of different, not just churchmanships, but theological perspectives,
Yeah.
and different traditions and different histories. And what I found was it was great to understand where each of them were coming from, gave you a bigger respect for stuff that, I mean, to be honest, I probably still don't understand smells and bells and all
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that stuff. But it gave you an understanding of why it's there from the point of view of different people. But I think what I probably found with Durham that was the best was it made me question everything I believed and the stances that I had things as a charismatic evangelical.
Yeah.
And then I actually came back to where I originally was, but it made me understand why I believed that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And I think
important.
that was really important.
Good.
And I think also it's about understanding what's primary and what's secondary. And actually, as Christians, I think there's primary doctrine and secondary doctrine. And as long as we agree on what's important, then the other stuff actually is all part of a conversation.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Great. Cool. I mean, I spent some time. We, as a family, we spent a little bit of time, or a season, as I describe it, as at an Anglican church, a really good, fantastic church, and I was asked by the vicar there. He said, "Who's what have you learned? Obviously, what have you taken from being a part of an Anglican church?" And I said, like, "Yeah, well, I've learned that we say the bits in bold." That's where I've kind of taken it from, and all of that kind of stuff. No, there was much more than that, but it was a moment. It was good. So again, it's good to kind of experience, like you say. But there's only one church, like you say, different flavors, but there's only one church, and absolutely. And so just to kind of put this on screen, Hannah just says, "Brill, thank you," and answering her question there, which is brilliant. So,
And that's it. I think there needs to be in the church. There has to be that eclectic mix of different churches,
yeah,
because actually, I mean, the church that our pastor now in concert, we're not everybody's flavour.
yeah,
We're not right for everybody in the community.
yeah,
And actually, the beauty of the church is there is this diverse mix of different flavours
yeah,
where everybody can find a home and everybody can find somewhere that is the right community for them.
yeah.
And that's the thing. And if churches were all the same, well, then that would exclude a lot of people, wouldn't it?
It would absolutely. So tell us a bit about. Maybe we can come back to obviously County Durham CLC. Is that right?
Yeah,
CDCLC.
that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And so we'll come back to that, and obviously the church that you pastor as well, which is great. But tell us about kind of North East Youth for Christ then, and what the kind of role looks like then. What because you said it had this massive vision that certainly you can get behind. But how do you live that out? What does that look like?
Yes. So when I started, it was an interesting time for the organisation because they had a history of doing some big amazing things like your Ninth Hours and being involved with Harvest
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Rock Solid was a program written by Northeast Youth for Christ that went national. There's charities all over the Northeast that birthed out of the work that we'd done. And so
yeah.
it had this rich history, but it was in a place where it hadn't had any kind of leadership in place for a year and a half. So it
Right.
was kind of ticking along and ready for new stuff. So the first real role was to say, well, who are we?
Hmm.
And what we did was look at what are we about? Who is Northeast Youth for Christ? Well, we'll have this phrase which is we're about seeing young people's lives changed by Jesus. So that's who we are. And for us, what we do is we developed four key areas that we wanted to see happen in the Northeast, and that was growing leaders,
Yeah,
which was about the fact that actually each and every one of us is a leader. And obviously, you played an introduction there all about leadership.
yeah,
Um, and I think at the end, when you put the quote up about what leadership is, I think what you need to do is Google John Maxwell's comments on leaderships, because he has a beautiful one where he basically says that leadership is simply influence.
yeah,
And what that tells me is that means that every single one of us is a leader because each of us has influence in a particular sphere of life. It might be the fact that you have a younger sibling looks up to you. It
Yeah.
might be the fact that you know you're in school and somebody else looks up to you. Whatever that may be, each of us have a little bit of influence in a little way. The question is, are you a good or a bad leader? And
Yeah.
that is determined what you do with it. So our first thing is we want to grow leaders. So growing leaders is our first key priority. So we want every young person to know that they're a leader and know that they have an input into life and they can lead an impact in their lives.
Great.
The second thing is we want to resource churches. So, as Northeast Youth for Christ, you often hear Youth for Christ described as what's called a parachurch organisation, which is an organisation that sits outside of the main body of the church. What I want Northeast Youth for Christ to be is an organisation that isn't described as parachurch, but is more a support for the church.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, what I want to do is I want to help and equip the church reach young people in their local communities, help encourage their youth leaders, get alongside them. Because actually, as an organisation, Northeast Youth for Christ can only do so much. The local church is where young people will be discipled, they'll grow, they get planted into a community. The local church matters. So for me as an organisation, we want to resource the church to do what only the church can do.
Yeah.
The other one is equipping schools. We work very closely with schools and go into different schools and run rock solid clubs. We run a course focused on using Christian principle to help young people in character, emotions, and lifestyle and that kind of thing. So we want to equip schools and help schools with how they work with their young people, and that's been very successful. And then finally, we want to gather young people together. And I think that comes from growing up in an environment where you had things like Ninth Hour was an event that met in the City Hall in Newcastle. And actually, Dave, you were part of an event down in Teesside as well.
Yeah, the Crucible. Yeah, for many years.
I remember coming down to the Crucible as well.
Yeah.
But, I remember these things. And what they did was they showed young people, Harvest as well, that actually, even though they might be a part of a youth group of 2 or 3 young people nowadays sometimes, or even 30, that actually they're not alone, that there's a bigger picture, that God is doing something bigger in a region.
Absolutely.
And actually they're a small part of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So by gathering young people together, what they do is that it's that build up of faith they get from seeing, hey, I'm part of this big movement of young people.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. I've got that place where I can come. So for me, that's what we do with Ask 77 is an event that's come out of that. So Ninth Hour finished many years ago. In its heyday, there was over 1,000 people meeting in the City Hall in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And that served its time, and there was some great things birthed out of that period.
Yeah, totally.
But really, what we did was we started 4 years ago. We started Ask 77. The name came from a poll of young people, and I had loads of really trendy names that I thought would be ideal for an event, and they all told me it was ridiculous because they were far too long and they couldn't tweet it. So Ask 77 came out of a poll of young people who picked it, and what it basically means is it's from Matthew 7:7, ask, seek, knock.
Yeah.
And that's where the name. So anybody who wants to know why it's Ask 77, there you go.
Knowledge.
But as an event, we've created that space where regionally churches from all over the Northeast can come together in worship, hear the word, gather together, meet young people from other churches, and just really be part of that wider body of Christ across the region.
Yeah.
The reason we're Northeast Youth for Christ and not what we used to be, which was Tyneside Youth for Christ, dates back to Robert Ward, actually. And Robert Ward basically felt that as an organisation, we needed to have that wider reach when it came to some of the events that we were putting on. So it was more about the fact that what we're doing is not just for Tyneside, it's for the Northeast.
Yes.
And we're seeing churches from over the Northeast travel in to join us at Ask 77.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is out of Ask 77, we want to grow young leaders. We want to equip young leaders. So, for example, if you come along, you'll see that the worship band is made up of young people. You'll see that often young people will be speaking. So I want to equip people in that area really, and use this environment that we have to help young people grow in their faith and their ability as leaders as well. So Ask 77 is a great environment. The next one is I'll plug it, I may as well. The next one is on the 19th of March at City Church in Newcastle. And that's going to be a great night. We're really looking forward to it. The team are prepping for that at the minute. and let me encourage you, embrace church, send a team up, send a group up. It'd be great to see you.
Yeah.
As an environment, it's great for teenagers, but it's also great for younger adults and families as well. It's a great place to come and hang out. We spend time chilling and getting to know each other beforehand. It's not you come in, sit down, have an event.
Yeah.
There's foosball and air hockey tables and stuff to do beforehand and all of that.
Fantastic.
So, we want to create that environment. So that's our 7-7, and that's part of what we do.
That sounds great. Obviously, like you say, so, I'll put Jamie's contact details up a little bit later on. And so, because there's, so many things that, that Northeast Youth for Christ are doing. And in partnership as well. Obviously, there's, because you mentioned Andy from Wearside, again, there's, Tees Valley Youth for Christ as well. So, again, there's lots of partnership working on there. But, again, we want to make sure that we just highlight our 7-7 and other events that you've got going on there as well. Well worth, like you say, getting yourself along to and checking out there and so on. So, that's Northeast Youth for Christ. You're involved in that role. We've got a little bit of time left. Again, as always, it's going really quickly. And we tend to try and do an hour. So within about 5 minutes or so, give us a bit of an overview. That's all, as much as you can. Give us an overview of the church that you lead. Then give us the title and how did that come about?
Yeah, so it was basically during lockdown. I really felt for 5 years, I've owned the web address www.cdclc.co.uk.
Yeah.
And I've owned that web address because, I was part of what was Newcastle Christian Life Centre. And I saw that grow and I saw what God did there. And it was an environment where people came in, met Jesus and grew in their faith. And I thought, this is tremendous.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm from a town in the north of County Durham called Consett. And Consett didn't have anything like that.
Right.
And, in the middle of Newcastle, there's loads of great churches. I could name 15, 20 churches off the top of my head that are doing great works in Newcastle. Newcastle doesn't need another church, but Consett did. So I've always had on my heart this taking that kind of, relevant church style to the local community where it's needed. And what you guys are doing in Darlington is a very similar thing. And, I just Consett was this place that didn't have that. So I prayed about it and I, sought counsel from friends of ours, John being one of them.
Yeah.
And I really felt in the middle of lockdown, I felt God say, get on with it and do it.
Great.
So in October 2020, we had our first service for Newcastle, for County Durham Christian Life Centre. And we met together in a little community centre that we're still in. And we had 2 weeks meeting together, and then the government locked us down again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then December we opened the doors again, and we've met every Sunday since. And it's been phenomenal. It's been a great journey. We've seen, we've had great Sundays. We've had difficult Sundays. We've had Sundays where tech fails entirely and the world falls apart, as I'm sure you've experienced.
I love those experiences. Yourself. Yeah, I can relate to that.
It's interesting, isn't it? How these days, if you want to do church ministry, you have to also become a sound producer, a video production engineer, have lots of camera equipment. You almost become a TV studio, don't you?
Yeah.
But we got on board with that really quickly. We invested in it. I don't take a salary out of church deliberately so that we can invest the money into growing the church and what we do. But we've just seen some phenomenal growth, and we've seen growth not with people just coming from other churches, but we've seen very much people from the community come in, meet Jesus and get connected into church. Amazing. Whether that be for the first time or people who have had a relationship with them 10, 15 years ago. And we've had people who've walked past the sign midweek and gone, oh, okay, I'll have a look at that. It looks a bit different. And we've had people come in, renew their faith and get planted into church. And it's just, fantastic. It's a really exciting thing. And we're just at that kind of gritty on the ground phase of just seeing God do some incredible things.
Amazing. Good on you. Fantastic. It's great to hear. Like I said in the intro here, it's great to hear God on the move and he's doing this stuff and he's alive and kicking and even things like lockdown and all of that kind of stuff. Obviously the church just had to learn new ways of communicating and gathering online as long.
And I think what's interesting with it is when we said we had a couple of different schools. We had the people who said, "Oh, one of those modern churches in concert, that'll never work."
Yeah.
People, it's all about the tradition up there. It'll never work. It's a hard place to start a church.
Right.
And this was what people told us. And then we had people who said, "Oh, you should wait until after the lockdowns and everything else. You can't start a church in the middle of a pandemic."
Yeah.
But, I really felt God say, right in the middle of a pandemic, in an area where nobody's doing any ministry at the minute, actually, where else would you stick a church?
Yeah.
You need to put it where the need is. During a pandemic, you've got lots of people who are isolated, lonely, and need Jesus more than ever before. And actually, concert is a place where people need to hear about the amazing blessing that God has for their lives. They need to hear that Jesus can transform their life, that Jesus died on a cross, that he brings hope, and that he brings restoration. Yeah. And that message is more important to concert than probably most places.
Yeah.
And for me, I just really felt God say, ignore the naysayers, get on with it.
Good on you.
And we've seen the fruit of what God's doing. And
amazing. If God's in it, then it's going to prosper, isn't it? Certainly, Hannah agrees with you. Concert needed it, as her comment on there. Absolutely. So, Jamie, obviously, I'm conscious of the time. We've got a few minutes before we kind of wrap up for this evening. As always, it's gone amazingly quickly, and I'm sure we could continue to kind of talk about all different areas and things like that, which is great. But what I really want to do is just give people your contact details, because you've talked about Northeast Youth for Christ and the amazing things like Ask 77 and the many other things that you're involved with, the schools work, etc. You've talked about CLC, if I got the right count. Yeah. And so, all of those things, how do people get in touch with you? So I'm going to put you on screen with your contact details and just let people know what do you want help with, what do you want support with, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, great. So I mean, obviously CDCLC, that's the church. It's County Durham Christian Life Centre. The information's on there. We'd love your support and encouragement. Hannah, by the way, if you can at some stage log on to our live stream and be as supportive and actively engaging as you are in this, that would be absolutely awesome. But please get in touch. Northeast Youth for Christ, we always need your support. We are a Christian charity. We operate by the giving and generosity of the Christian church. And, our general support base is dwindling. So if you are in a position to support the work of Northeast Youth for Christ, we'd love you to get involved that way, whether it be £5 or £50 a month, whatever you could support. Please get in touch with us, because we'd love people to support Youth for Christ, because your little bit really does make a difference with where we are as an organisation. With the church primarily, please just pray for what we do. I believe that when you step out in faith, it only works when people are supporting you in prayer and building you up. So please be praying for us as a church as we step out and do what we're doing in concert. But I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to have you get in touch. Please do that, whether it be on social media or through either of the organisations.
Absolutely. Well, you've reached out to Hannah, and Hannah is, I'm going to put her on screen, so she have to commit to that. She is going to be, tuning into your live stream, and when she's not really busy at Embrace Church as well, those kind of things. So, whenever that may be, then we will, obviously she will be as enthusiastic as Hannah always is. There we go. What an amazing person she is. Listen, it's been great to kind of connect with you tonight, and like you say, I love, from all the things, your T-shirts, your amazing guitar, your theology books, some of which you said you've read, and all of the things, your wonderful family, your story, and, great stuff, obviously reliving Harvest, and those kind of moments, particularly Gaz in the Silver XC, was it a 90? Yeah. And so all of those kind of antics and things, I remember you and others as well, very, very clearly from Harvest times. And we all had a bit of antics of some kind.
So moving on.
Yeah. But the amazing stuff then, like you say, and I think the most important thing from tonight is that you feeling, going on some experience from your journey of church and people in church, coming to a point where actually meeting other people in church where they reflected Jesus and said, come as you are, even if that is listening to AC/DC, Highway to Hell and all of those kind of things, which I have to say it's a classic tune. It's a brilliant one. Right, so all of that kind of stuff. And then it's amazing to hear you commit your life to stepping out to what God's calling you to be. and the journey that he's bringing you on. And obviously, huge step of faith, giving up a good salary, you said, and things to study, and then to go on and, living out your faith in a role in Northeast Youth for Christ, but also going on to pastor a church, and of God, kind of saying, actually, it's my time and not what other people, okay? And we're not going to get into Gaz Jackson's questions about how clean your car was and things like that. But, the amazing thing is, actually, I love that you said, just tune out the naysayers. It's God's time, and if He's in it, if He's calling to it, then you're amazing that I'm going to act on that. I'm going to do it, which is great and encouraging to hear, mate. So it's fantastic.
So I believe right now in the north of east of England, I think the Holy Spirit is on the verge of doing something incredible.
Yeah.
And you see it in churches from Newcastle. And one of the joys of being the director of Youth for Christ, where we are, is the fact that you get to see lots of different ministries.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing at the moment is I'm seeing God doing little amazing things in so many different places that actually I believe we're on the verge of something new and fresh from God.
Amen. Come on, bring it on.
He's going to use churches like yours, like mine, organisations like Youth for Christ, to do some incredible things. I think it's a new season. I think something new is about to happen. And I think we need to be open to what God's going to do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to be part of it, and I want more of what God's going to do.
And, I mean, this is part of, it's not the reason, but, completely the reason, but this is part of why we do these Embrace Lives each week, actually, and hear from different people. I find it, honestly, so encouraging to hear God on the move doing so many different amazing things through people, and, and then their time and their stories and everything else. It's amazing, but I absolutely agree. And we were just, like we said, we want it, as much, again, bring it on. We're up for that, and we need to be, up for it, and whatever God's calling us to do and stuff. So, mate, it's been great. Like I say, obviously, I really want to encourage people to support Northeast Youth for Christ and the other YFC centres across the Northeast, and obviously support the CDCC. What is it again? CDCLC.
County Durham Christian Life Centre.
I'm gonna have to stop saying that and just actually County Durham CLC. Right. Christian Life Centre. And so
you can get it at concert.church. Is that easier for you?
Concert.church, thank you. All right, there we go. I can remember that one. Absolutely. So it's amazing, that obviously you're involved in something. I'm just really encouraged to hear your story, mate. It's great, and I'm just so thankful that, God uses people like you and I who maybe have done some crazy things in the past and things and gone up and down and stuff, and it's just moving through, ordinary numpties like, me and good people like yourself.
Definitely.
So
and I think for me, it was actually through people like, and what I would say to you, Dave, is obviously Harvest. We talked about, you chaired Harvest for a number of years.
I did for a while, yeah.
Gary Jackson was involved in Harvest massively. It was things like Harvest that kept my faith alive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd love to say for my generation, which is only, 9-10 years past yours, a little bit further with Gaz. But, for my generation, thank you for what you guys did and what you guys sowed.
Thank you.
Because actually what you did paved the way for us to develop in faith to a level where actually now we can step up into what God's calling us.
Amazing. So, thank you. No, I really appreciate that.
Thank you for that, and that's really appreciated.
Absolutely. I'm just looking here that I'm just going to put on screen. Helen, hope you didn't miss out someone pestering him to go to church and listen to worship when he hated it.
Hello, Helen. Many years. So many years, I did mention a period in my early 20s where I was ridiculously rebellious and didn't really engage with church much. In that time, I used to work for SCS, the furniture company, and round the corner in the Metro Centre, there was a little Christian bookshop called The Ocracy, and there was a girl who worked in The Ocracy called Helen Rose.
Yes.
Was Helen, can't remember, but yeah, Helen Rose. And Helen used to pester me and say, "Oh, there's this great thing called Hillsong. You've got to listen to it." And I'm like, "That sounds rubbish. Leave me alone." And Helen pestered me to listen to Hillsong. And I remember later bumping into Helen in Hillsong church, and I just going, told you about Hillsong. So there you go. That's
good on it. That's important. Well done, Helen. Absolutely. Mate, it's been great. Thank you ever so much. And like I said, I really appreciate you giving up your time. I know you're a busy fella, and I want to encourage everybody, get on the socials, like your North East Youth for Christ, County Durham CLC, Concert.Church, whatever, all of those kind of, obviously just keep yourself up to date, support where you can, whatever that support kind of looks like, all right? But bless you, mate, have a good one, all right? Thank you very much, and I look forward to kind of seeing you again in the future and so on. I think it's just worth just having a few moments of... just this again, because the quality is just amazing in the entertainment. Just so we get in, when it goes for it, and then we'll end the show.
Thanks, Dave.
You're very welcome. I love this. It's well worth tuning in for the entire video.
Goodness me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gav Richards, as well. Passion. I love it.
So you're over time, Dave. I think it's time to move on.
Yeah. I'll decide that. Look at that. Love it. I can't believe that they never let me on worship. Again. Did you lead worship with that passion? That's what I want to know.
They never let me leave worship. After I'd done that, I was never allowed.
And some days it don't come hard. Some days it don't come at all.
All right, we'll stop it there.
Yeah, thanks.
I love it. So if you want to, again, just go and check out that important video that everybody needs to see regularly and post it all over your socials because it is immense.
What would be more important is get on YouTube and like and subscribe to County Durham Christian Life Centre.
Oh, good.
Because I want to get over 100 people so I can change the name of it to, rather than being a load of letters, it's actually the name of the church.
Which is exactly why I'm saying as well, please do so with Embrace Church Darlington. If I go to this one, there we go, I'll just put that on there because I would like it to be that address. It's not actually that address yet because we need those subscribers as well. So please do that as well. All right.
So I'll do you a deal, Dave. I'll go on YouTube right now and I'll subscribe to Embrace Church Darlington.
Yeah.
If you go on and you subscribe to County Durham Christian Life Centre.
It's a deal.
Excellent.
All right. Nice one, mate. All right. Bless you, everyone. Have a good week. We'll see you next week at 8 o'clock. Set your reminder now. And thanks again, Jamie, for tonight. You've been brilliant, mate. All right. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Take
Bye-bye.
care, mate.